All right, battery number 3 for the day. I guess I'm just eating through these things, unfortunately. I get to about 40% on the camera and they just stop. I'm not sure what to do at this point. I've got 2 brand new replacement batteries. One doesn't even fit. One gets to 40% and dies. All my other batteries seem to die pretty fast, so I guess we're making a lot of battery changes on this video. Anyway, my goal right now is to go ahead and get this rear master cylinder mount and all the apparatus off. There should be 2 bolts in here, one here and one here. Obviously this one is completely gone. And this one, as far as I know, bolts into the frame, and there may be a nut on the back side of that. But we're gonna try to hit it with a little power here and see if we can get this thing to break free. And there is a nut on the back side of that, so we'll see if we can get to it in some sort of a easy enough manner. I think that did it. Try not to lose all the hardware in the oil bath there. It looks like I will have to remove these as well. So we'll go ahead, we'll get on these 2 cover bolts that also bolt through the master cylinder themselves. There is a bracket that wraps around the back side here that actually hooks to the frame. So I will have to go ahead and get these off as well. By some lucky reason, I missed the oil. I'm not sure how that happened. So now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll cut the rest of the zip ties along the bottom of the frame here. That way everything's ready to be removed on this. I know I have to pull that brake line, so I'll work on that as well. All right, as you can see, we've got this rear master cylinder removed. We've got the whole bracket and apparatus taken off in one part. It's kind of a neat little unit. It's got a little protector here to go in front of the brake line. I'm not sure if that's a factory piece or a one-off thing. Something I've never seen before, that's for sure. It is nice that this comes off as one unit. I know I've seen these a couple of times in parts that I've sold, but I've never actually seen one together. Again, because I haven't messed with these bikes a whole lot. Well guys, this is where I'm going to end the video today. This is where I'm going to stop for now and just kind of shut everything down. I'm going to go ahead and get a couple other things done around the shop. If I've got time later today, we'll start back in on this project and hopefully, get some more parts off. As you can see, this bike is coming apart fairly easily. It's fighting me a little bit, but that's to be expected. I mean, this thing is, 2 years old or something. So, I mean, it should give me a little bit of a fit coming apart. Welcome back. later in the same day, got a bunch of stuff done around the shop that I needed to do, and I've got some more time. And you know, time's not always on your side, but today it is on my side. So I'm gonna do a little bit more on this bike to get a little more torn off of it, to get this thing off this lift. Because like I said, I wanna get it torn down. I wanna get it apart, and I wanna get these parts up for sale. So I'm gonna go back to working on this bike and trying to get the rest of it taken apart. I'm gonna snip all these zip ties. There's I don't know, a billion of them down here. One every 2 inches it seems like. So I'm gonna go ahead and clip all those, and then we're gonna see where we're at from there, what we need to remove next. I think out of every bike I've ever worked on, this is the most zip ties I've ever seen. And I know that none of these are factory, so I'm not sure if this bike was rebuilt at some point in time or what someone's done to it or why even. What's funny is some of these are like the brake line and some of the wiring is tied together. Other ones are, well, we just need to tie the wire on and not the brake line. I'm not sure why they did it that way, but we're gonna get them all clipped. That was so brittle, I didn't even have to clip it. With all the zip ties clipped off, I'm gonna actually put these, I'm gonna screw these mount bolts back in place because I don't want them to get lost. I don't want them to accidentally fall out. I want to keep that mount on the transmission. And then from there, I'm gonna start removing parts like the rear peg here. I'm not even sure what this is off of. This is later, I believe. There's no numbers on it. I want to say this is off an iron head. I think this is an iron head peg. I'm not positive on that. I know I've seen these in the past, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. You can see the cool mount that somebody made for this thing. I believe they used a brake caliper stud to mount this in place. I'm not sure. I think that's what this is. I feel this is like a banana caliper brake stud. That's what it looks like. I've used 2 large nuts as spacers. Just kind of a neat little home-brewed thing. I think for me, the best part about this is the peg on the left side and the peg on the right side were quite different in height. I don't think that'd be real comfortable for the passenger, but then again, I don't know who the passenger was. Maybe they had a long leg or something. But as you can see, I mean, it's this style peg here, and like I said, I think that's off an iron head. And then from there, there's this stud, which I'm 100% positive that's a banana caliper stud. And then this, I think is threaded in place. I'm not sure. It's a home-brewed job there. We'll get that apart eventually. I'm not gonna mess with it right now. Doesn't need to come apart just yet. I'll get the right size wrenches on this and we'll get it pulled apart. Different. All right, from there, we're gonna go ahead and start removing the solenoid, the starter, and the wiring that goes to these parts here, just to kind of start backing some of this wiring out and getting things out of the way. I know the starter works, which is a good thing. We did start the bike, so we know definitively that the starter actually works, so I can sell this as a good working unit without having to bench test it. I never like bench testing things because when you test them just with power, there's no load on it, so you don't know how well it actually works. Sometimes I've realized with these starters, if you don't have a load on it, it doesn't always work. So when you bench test, you'll sell it as bench tested, and sometimes that doesn't mean it actually works right. The starter's got this pretty neat little cover here. I haven't seen one of these before, but there's one of those. We'll go ahead and put the cap nuts back in place here. And of course, when you're working on these bikes, you have to run into some metric parts. So here's a 10mm nut on the end of this. This chrome starter is probably an aftermarket job anyway. This probably was a JP Cycle special or a custom chrome job or something like that. But it does work, so that's the good part. Try to get all the washers off and keep them all together so I don't lose them. I like to put all these parts back together on the starters so that way when I sell it, it has all the pieces. And I'll sell a lot of the wiring that goes along with it, you know, battery wiring and then the ground wire and whatnot. So that way when someone buys these parts, they buy them as complete. Next, we're going to move to the solenoid, and we're going to go ahead and remove the cap and the wiring to that. And the cap is, of course, zip tied on, so we'll have to cut the zip tie off of the cap. These things are literally everywhere. And I can see why. I mean, I know these things go bad. They rot away and they get brittle and they fall apart, and that's what this one did. So now I just need to get the right size socket to get the wiring removed from that, so we'll go ahead and we'll get that next. Now with the right size socket, I'm going to go ahead and undo these two nuts here and then take the wiring off. And these are always fun to take apart. Sometimes everything wants to spin, and sometimes these caps will break. So I try to hold the wiring in place while I do this, just to keep everything from falling apart. With the wiring removed, now I'm going to go ahead with my longer extension here and we're going to pull the solenoid itself. There's one solenoid removed. With that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and work on removing the starter next. I did drop one of the bolts down on top of the transmission, so I'll have to get that once the starter's out of the way. It looks like I've got 3 1/2-inch bolts, one here and then one on each side, one on each ear of the starter. So same thing, we'll get into the bike with the long extension. Get both of these to loosen up. With those 3 loosened, I should be able to pull this starter. We'll get them all the way off, and the starter should come right out. And in looking at this rear peg mount, I see why they changed it out. The mount tab here is busted right off. So it makes me wonder if this bike was in an accident at some point in time. I mean, this is, I don't know, 3/4 inch piece of solid steel and it's busted right off. So somehow this thing hit pretty hard somewhere. Alright, that's the starter removed now, so that's out of the way. Drive gear is still on the back side here. So there's the drive gear. And there's that bolt that I lost. Along with a few washers and a whole pile of leaves. Now with that out of the way, I'm going to start working my way backwards here. We're going to remove the saddlebag guards next. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these top bolts here and then work on trying to get the rest of this thing disassembled. So we're going to move back on the bike and try to work on this part to get this off next. From there, I'm not sure where we're going just yet, but I know that this will be the next biggest task for me. So we're going to move backwards and try to get that off. So these are 1/2-inch bolts here, so we're going to loosen these first. And I think the rest of these I can just undo from here. It doesn't feel like they run all the way through. I'm pretty sure these are threaded inside of these brackets. And of course there's these top 2 here, and I don't feel anything on, well, maybe there's one on the inside back there. We'll see what that does in a second. Yep, that one does spin, so we'll try to get on that with a wrench. Should be just enough room to get in there. With that, I need a non-ratcheting wrench. I can hook onto every, get a good point back here to hold on to. And I think now I've got that. So with that wrench in place, I should be able to unscrew this the rest of the way. Now with these guards removed, I'll be able to unbolt this lower guard. The same thing, that's got 1/2 inch nut and bolt on both sides. Now that that's done, I know on the bottom side of this battery tray, there's actually a stud that runs clear through a post that's hooked to the frame here. I think that's a 7/16, so we're gonna move down there and try to get that unbolted. I had a ratcheting 7/16 wrench, but unfortunately with this mess I've got going on, I put it somewhere and I can't find it. We'll do it the slow way. Of course, this has the wrong bolt on it, so it literally is the longest bolt ever. So with that, we're going to hang on to it, and I think we're going to get on it with the power wrench here. Try to get this off a little faster. As you can see, somebody made their own homemade spacer there and put this thing together. The further I get into this bike, the more I think it probably was in a wreck at some point in time. I don't know. There's a dent in the top of the fender there. This is busted off. This did not get broke, I don't think. We'll find out as soon as we pull it here. Seems to be right. I'm not sure. But we've got one set of saddlebag guards off. Now, of course, it's grounded to that bracket, so I'm going to go ahead and have to remove that ground. Bag brackets out of the way. I'm considering trying to remove the transmission at this point. I'm not sure if that's a good idea. I know I need to pull the clutch hub assembly on the other side. So I'm thinking I'll move to the other side. I'll pull the clutch and the compensator and that whole works over there. And then I think I can remove the transmission at that point. I think I'm close enough to being able to do that. So I'm gonna move to the other side now, and we're gonna work on getting that clutch assembly removed. Unfortunately, we're working on the dark side of the shop. If you watch my shorts feed, you'll notice that I did buy lights to actually illuminate this side in hopes to have them up before I started on this project. Well, out of the 2 lights I ordered, one worked and the other one electrocuted me. That was super fun. It made a great arcing sound, and when I actually grabbed the light bar itself just to see if the connection was bad or something, it shocked me. It was kind of neat. So those are going back. Thanks, Amazon. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and try to remove this whole inner primary section here. So I have a trick that I'm sure everybody has seen at this point in time, where I've got a couple of washers, and I'll show you why those are important in a second here. So what you'll do is you'll take the washers. I've got 2 sizes, a great big one and a little bit smaller one. You'll slide those in place, and with those in place, you'll push this adjuster jam nut, not push it, but screw it back on. You know, screw that on until it's pretty tight. Now that you have that tight, what you'll do is you'll take these off. Now you can pull the outer hub off without losing all the springs. It's one of the things that I was taught a long time ago, and I'm definitely very thankful for, and it's something I've used ever since. I've got a couple sets of those washers laying around because, you know, like anything, you put it down and it's gone for a while. So I typically can find one set. Someday I'll go ahead and I'll weld those together so they're one piece. And I know Harley Davidson actually makes a tool for that. But I don't have the tool. I've never found one for sale. I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure they're probably really good money. This works really well. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'll start pulling these clutch plates. And these things are gummy. I mean, obviously they came out in one big stack. I'm sure that if I would have ridden this bike, it would have been kind of fun because these things are gross. I'm sure the clutch would have stuck real bad. All right, with that done, we should be able to remove this. These are called super nuts on these. These have a gasket on the inside so they don't leak, but it's the clutch hub nut. I'll get the right tool for this or the right size socket for this, and I'll go ahead and remove this. Now with this, it's reverse thread, so it winds the opposite direction. So that's something to keep in mind too, when you take these off, that you're actually gonna wanna put your tool in reverse and wind it the other way. Otherwise, you know, you're just going to continue to tighten it and do damage. So if you don't have a 1/2-inch drive Milwaukee impact, a lot of this work is really tough. I know it can be done with a breaker bar and all that good stuff. Honestly, this thing makes it simple. I'll show you on this compensator nut. Just like that, it's loose. One of the things to keep in mind when you're taking this super nut off is to knock down the lock tabs. of course, with my 1/2-inch drive impacts here and a breaker bar to keep this from moving. I know that's not the right way to do it, honestly, but that's how I'm going to do it today. Hopefully. We'll go ahead and we'll reverse this thread. And this is that super nut. It's got that gasket on the outside, so it keeps all of the transmission fluid from leaking out that main shaft. Now I'm going to pull the tensioner. That's the last thing I'm going to do before I start taking the clutch hub assembly apart. I've got obviously the clutch hub, the rest of the front compensator. Once I loosen this, this whole apparatus should come right out. Now with that out of the way, I should be able to start pulling these forward. The basket should come. Everything, of course, will fall. And the clutch hub itself should come off. There may be a little bit of fight in it. I know it does have a Woodruff key in there. And I know sometimes those can get a little stuck. Now that the clutch hub assembly itself is completely removed, now I can go ahead and back out these couple of bolts, and then this inner primary should be ready to pull. I'm going to have to go ahead and get my heavy duty industrial wire cutters because these are all still wire tied. I feel that that's factory. I could be wrong, but I really think that those are the factory wire ties on this. I don't think this inner primer has ever been taken off. I'm not really sure. I think it's a real factory number, so it's the 60602-79. So it is the real deal Harley Davidson inner primary. I don't think it's ever been taken off. I don't think it's ever been maintained. So I'm going to cut all these safety wires and then pull those out, and that way I can pull these studs. With my heavy duty cutters here, I'll go ahead and start cutting these safety wires, getting them out of the way. Should be wearing glasses for this. I typically do. Sometimes these small wires take a little persuasion, so I'm going to use my needle nose pliers to help guide these things out and try to straighten them out quite a bit, so that way I can yank them out properly. Now with those stubborn wires removed, we'll go ahead and remove the 4 bolts that are holding this on. There may be one from the back side on the bottom. I feel like there's one maybe right here. I don't remember. I know that these bikes during these years had changed quite a bit on different, how they mounted inner primaries, and I'm not sure how this one mounts exactly, but we'll get into it real soon here and see exactly what was, on the back side, if there is anything. There might not be. Giving it a quick look over. I've got the 2 front bolts out. I've got the 2 bolts here out and those 2 bolts out. So we'll see if this will move. That is pretty solid on there, so I'm assuming that on the back side here, that doesn't feel like that's it either. Somewhere, I think there's a mount bolt, and I think it's right here, covered in lots and lots of road grime. I think there's just the one. So we'll get underneath there. I believe there were 2 on the bottom. I did unscrew both of them, and hopefully that will help me to be able to pull this inner primary off. It should be loose at this point, I think. If it's not, I'm not sure where the other bolt would be at. Morning, new day in the shop. Yesterday we worked on this bike all day, made a ton of videos on it. Now we're back at it again today. The goals for today, get this inner primary cover removed and this chain guard removed. What they did on these bikes, I think 80 through 82, maybe later, is they enclosed the entire chain. So that way it was in its own oil. And that way it kept the oil from flying all over the wheel. And actually the wheel is super clean compared to most of these that I've seen. But these are kind of a pain in the butt to take apart. So I need to get the rubber boots off in order to get this inner primary apart, or be able to pull it apart, because this is all linked together in one unit. It's all enclosed. From here, they have an Allen head in the top and bottom of the back side and on the primary side. I can get to these pretty easy on this side. My hope is I'll be able to take these all off, pull the primary out, and then remove the studs on that side. We're gonna try it. I haven't taken one of these apart before. I just have seen videos and they look like a giant pain. So here we go. We're gonna get to the disassembly process here. Of course, we're working in the dark. Don't have a lot of light on this side of the shop, but my new replacement lights have shipped and they're supposed to be here on Thursday. I'm hoping those will make a big difference and they'll be actually really nice. One of the funny things is, even though this is an enclosed unit and it's supposed to keep all the oil in, it's covered in oil. It's actually really gross. I'm not sure what seals are inside these things, or what the maintaining process is on these, or what you're supposed to do to keep them from, leaking, but I'm sure there's something. I was able to remove the top Allen head screw from the top of the inner primary, but in looking at this, that was the only one I could really get to. I didn't see a good way to actually be able to get this apart without taking the bag guard off, which I've done already, as you can see, and then removing the boots from this side. I think this is my best option, so this is the one we're going with. I did go through and kind of tidy up a little bit around here. Got all the hardware that I've taken off this bike all bagged together. Typically when I pull a bike apart, I like to take all the hardware and I like to put it in one big lot, and I sell that stuff on eBay together as the takeoff hardware from this specific model. And that seems to sell really well. Of course, I've boxed up some of the stuff that I've taken off already, and I hope to be listing all these things for the weekend. I'd like to have all these parts stripped from this bike and then this weekend go ahead and list all of them on eBay. We'll see. This bottom side is caked in grime and I can't even see the stud here. There's so much grime in this Allen head that I'm actually going to take my pick and try to pick a lot of the grime out. There could be even stones stuck in there for all I know. It's pretty gross. But I can't get my Allen head in there, my Allen head ratchet in there at all. And it could be stripped. I'm not sure if it is. We're going to try to clean it out first. See if that makes a difference. That did make a difference. I always have the bottom one left, and again, that one's caked full of grease. You can see the grime that's coming off of this bike. Stuff's pretty gross. It's thick. The same thing, that Allen head was full, was packed full. Once I get these boots undone, we'll go ahead and remove both the halves, the top and the bottom. I'm pretty sure they just come apart. I don't think I have to remove the wheel in order to get them off. I think they're just two halves that bolt together. That's my hope, at least. Once I get those parts separated, then I should be able to separate the chain and then pull this, inner primary off. That's my goal at this point. I'm hoping that will work. I believe it will. It appears there's a 7/16 stud here, on the bottom here. I'm not sure exactly what else is on here. Maybe one in the back here. I think if I undo those 3 points, I can take this cover apart. So we're going to try that. For this hardware, I'm going to try to keep it together. That way, when I sell this part, I will be able to sell it all as one unit. And actually, that's a screw. I didn't even realize that was a screw. That one's a nut. Of course, there's something on the top. I'm not sure if it's a whole bolt or if it's a screw head. It's covered in lots and lots of dirt. Now I should be able to separate this. I have a wrench for the top of the bolt and a socket wrench for the nut there. We'll go ahead and get them separated. Now there should be a screw on this side that holds the cover together. There is one on this side. Obviously that one is gone. It must have fallen out at some point in time. We'll go ahead and unscrew this side. Maybe. I do see there's another bolt and nut on that side, so I think we'll work on trying to get that apart next. That screw does not seem to be turning really well. I may have to soak that in some penetrating lube. I really don't want to break it. Well, I have to say it's a good thing I didn't try to take this bike for a ride. There's no chain in there. Not at all. I don't even see the chain. Not on the top at least, so I'm not sure if the chain's busted or if it's laying in the bottom. Doesn't feel like there's a chain in there. It's a neat discovery. Well, friends, there's no chain on this bike at all. It's pretty neat to see, that's for sure. I thought I'd be able to ride this bike, and I was told that I could. It's okay. You never know what you're getting into, and you couldn't see it, obviously, with that cover in place. So I really thought that there was a chain inside there. Not sure why there's not. That's okay. That's not for me to figure out now. I'm not really worried about it. It's one less hurdle to try to get through, because I don't know how to get this cover apart right now. I don't have a good way to get it apart yet. I may have to wait till I'm taking that rear wheel off to figure out how to get that apart. But for now, I think I could pull this primary through and then unbolt these boots. So let's give that a shot. Looking under the motorcycle, I do see that it has a oil radiator. I'm not sure what they call those things, but it's when it heats up, I know it lets the oil pass. I want to say it's a radiator, but I could be wrong. And all of the breather cables and the vacuum system that's tied to this is zip tied, and a bunch of zip ties on the underside of the bike here that's holding everything kind of together. So I'm gonna have to go to the other side, cut all those zip ties off, and then I think I'm free to pull this primary. We'll find out shortly.